The 2014 NHL draft produced some of the most incredibly talented players that currently are in the NHL, but like other drafts, there were some teams that hit on their selections and some teams that just didn't do so well. So today we're going to take a trip back to 2014, redrafting the top 10 players that were selected. Remember, this is a fantasy redraft, so outside factors like a player wanting to play for a certain team doesn't really apply here. Before we get started though, I make daily NHL and hockey related tier lists and videos, so if you haven't subscribed to the channel, make sure you do that now, and let's get right into it. With their first overall selection, the Florida Panthers took Aaron Ekblad, who I consider to be one of the better defensemen in this draft. So if the Panthers needed a defenseman, this does make sense for their organization. However, when you have a high-end talent center like Leon Draisaitl in a draft, you have to take that kind of player first overall. Draisaitl surged onto the scene in the NHL, becoming a top 5 center after just a few seasons. He won a Hart Trophy in the 2019-20 season and has logged 807 points in 688 games played. It's crazy to think that in 3 years the Oilers would select 2 top 5 players and be in such a great position to win a cup. There are some other players in this draft that I could have taken in the number 1 spot in my redraft, but it's hard to find another player with such a high ceiling like Draisaitl to take in the number 1 position. With the number 2 selection, the Buffalo Sabres selected Sam Reinhart, and Reinhart has been a great selection for most of the teams that he's played with. Now don't get me wrong, he can score with the best of them, but there is another goal scorer in this draft that even I considered taking over Draisaitl. Originally selected with the 25th overall pick by the Boston Bruins, David Pastrnak is easily the best winger in the NHL today. Pasta brings so much to the table, and I believe he is easily the second best goal scorer right behind Austin Matthews. Pasta has 695 points in 646 games played and has helped the Bruins remain in contention through the past few seasons. Just last season he had 61 goals, and this year he's on pace to hit that same mark. If there was a winger that I would want to build a franchise around, it would easily be David Pastrnak. With the 3rd overall pick, the Edmonton Oilers took Leon Draisaitl, which was a great pick, but since he was taken with the 1st overall pick in this redraft, the Oilers instead take a player at the position that they desperately need to improve on. With the 3rd overall pick, the Oilers select Ilya Sorokin to be their next franchise goalie. I bet Oiler fans would be pretty happy with this player as a consolation prize to Draisaitl. Sorokin is arguably the best goalie in the NHL and would be a huge difference maker for the Oilers. For the past few seasons, the biggest hole in this Edmonton roster has been their goaltending. Sorokin has been incredibly solid since joining the league, and with the Islanders he's had 4 seasons with 86 wins in his career. Sorokin right now is sporting a career .921 save percentage and a 2.49 goals against average. If you were a team looking to fix your goaltending back in 2014, then Sorokin would have been the best option available. With their 4th overall pick, the Calgary Flames selected Sam Bennett, who was a fine pick, about a half a point per game player, but instead of Bennett, the Flames take Braden Point, who is a massive upgrade for them at center. Believe it or not, Point was originally selected in the 3rd round as a 79th overall pick. Point has exceeded expectations with the Lightning and is one of the more underrated goal scorers in the NHL. You'll have a hard time finding another player who is as well-rounded as Point. Right now he has 519 points in 554 games played, and last season he had 51 goals and is on pace to match that same total. With this pick, the Flames would have a franchise player and be in a much better position today with this selection. With the 5th overall pick, the New York Islanders selected Michael Dal-Cole, who hasn't exactly turned out great for the organization. Cole has only 21 points in 112 games played, which isn't exactly ideal for any top 5 selection. Instead, the Islanders will miss out on Sorokin this year, but take Igor Shesterkin instead with the 5th overall pick. Even with his down season, Shesterkin is still a top 3 goalie in the NHL, and I'm sure any team would give up their starter to take him in net. Shesterkin won the Vezina Trophy in the 2021-22 season and has a career .920 save percentage and a 2.45 goals against average. Shesterkin stays in New York, but in this redraft, he is headed to Long Island. With the 6th overall pick, the Vancouver Canucks select Jake Virtanen, who has been a pretty underwhelming player for the 6th overall. He has 100 points in 316 games played and is basically a bottom 6 winger. Instead, the Canucks would upgrade their top line by adding William Nylander with this 6th pick. Nylander is a superstar in the NHL and is one of the top wingers in the league. In 574 games played, he has 500 points, and in his past 2 seasons, Willie topped 80 points. This season, he is having his career best year and is on pace to reach 100 100 points for the first time, and with Vancouver being a serious contender this year, I can only imagine how good this team would be if they added another top-line winger to this roster. With the 7th overall pick, the Carolina Hurricanes select defenseman Hayden Fleury, who's just fine. He's a bottom-pairing defenseman who has already played for 4 franchises and usually gets scratched throughout the year, so definitely not worth a top 10 pick if you ask me. Instead of taking Fleury, the Canes select Dylan Larkin instead. Larkin is a stud and right now is the face of the Red Wings organization. He has 484 points in 631 games played and is a fantastic player on both sides of the ice. Larkin would be a great addition to this Hurricanes offense and would really help them take it to another gear, making them a much greater scoring threat than they have been in the past few seasons. With the 8th overall pick, Toronto selected William Nylander, but again, he was selected earlier by Vancouver, so instead the Maple Leafs take a player from the Canucks in Thatcher Demko. Like the Oilers, the Maple Leafs have really struggled to find a consistent starting goalie, and you'll have a hard time finding a guy who is as solid as Demko between the pipes. Demko is currently having a Vezina season with the Canucks this year, having a .912 career save percentage and a 2.80 goals against average. In this redraft, the Maple Leafs take one of their expensive forwards and swap him out for a legitimate starting goalie. With the 9th overall pick, the Winnipeg Jets select Nikolaj Ehlers, who has really become a fan favorite over in Winnipeg. As far as wingers go in this draft, he is the one that really lived up to the pre-draft hype, and his contract is just so good. Just as a side note, the Jets have done a fantastic job managing their contracts, and all of their best players signed such team-friendly deals. In this redraft, the Winnipeg Jets are keeping their selection, and Ehlers is a big part of this organization moving forward, so it was a great pick for them at the time and today. With the 10th overall pick, the Anaheim Ducks make one of the worst picks in recent memory, taking Nick Ritchie. Nick Ritchie was always a bottom line forward, and I really disliked his game. He was slow, lacked the skill that you want to see from a first round pick, and already has played for 5 teams in his career, currently being out of the league. So I think GMs in the league kind of agree with me on this. It wasn't terrible at the time, but looking back at it today, it just didn't feel like the right selection when you're really considering some of the other guys in this draft. Rather than taking Nick Ritchie, the Anaheim Ducks instead take stud winger Kevin Fiala. Fiala is so underrated and has such a solid game. He has 398 points in 539 games played and was taken just 1 pick below Ritchie, so you can probably imagine the frustration of the Anaheim Duck fans out there when they opted to pass on Fiala in place of this guy. Fiala was fantastic with the Wild and has really improved the Kings offense since heading to LA in the past couple of seasons. I definitely think he was one of the more underrated players on this list and deserves to be in the top 10. But this is my NHL 2014 draft redraft. This one was pretty hard and I had to leave some great players like Aaron Ekblad out of my top 10, which was a tough decision to make. Let me know what you would change about this list and which players you would have included in your top 10. Comment which draft you want me to redraft next. Like this video, subscribe to the channel, and I will see you guys in the next one.